How's it going, everybody? Ragroth here. So I got another and possibly the final top 10 character list I would want for Dragon Ball Tenkaichi 4. And I kind of wanted to save the best for last. This is primarily focused on Dragon Ball Super characters. Now, why did I save this one for last? Well, A, I like saving the best for last. And B, well, there were two characters on this list that I wanted to try to wait till they actually were released in Xenoverse 2, so I could actually have capture some footage for them when I'm talking about them. And let's just say you'll be saying to yourself, aren't you glad that Ragroth waited to capture this beastly footage? But I digress. Dragon Ball Super has its fans, it has its detractors. I'm not really here to argue how written the show is, how great the animation is, how many color swap transformations they use. Not about that. Just talking about what characters would be cool to see make it in the Tenkaichi 4, because I think this is a big deal, because I think it's interesting to wonder like what some of the newer Dragon Ball characters would have been like in the older games, such as the Tenkaichi games. Now, a little disclaimer for this list: I'm not going to be including characters that have only been in the manga, like Moro, Ultra Ego Vegeta, Black Frieza, Granola, for two reasons. One, I don't really keep up with the manga, so I don't know all that much about them, because I'd want to actually, hopefully one day, we can actually see them in animated form someday. And the other reason is just because I don't think they're going to make at least the base roster of the game. DLC, maybe, but I think they're out of the question for the base roster. That's not to say I don't want to see these characters, I definitely do. I just don't even think they're worth considering at this point in the game, where it's just still so early and we haven't seen any super characters aside from Super Saiyan Blue Goku in the game. So that said, let's get started.
Number 10.
So first up is Toppo in his God of Destruction form. So honestly, when Toppo first appeared in the Tournament of Power, I didn't really think much for him. I thought his design was goofy. There's just nothing was really that much to him. I knew he was powerful, obviously, because he was with part of Jiren's Pride Troopers. That was really about it. The only thing I was kind of interested in was that he was kind of an apprentice for the next God of Destruction. And this would eventually pay off much later in the Tournament of Power. When he transformed, I definitely became much more interested in him and much more interested in seeing him in more games. He basically became Dragon Ball Z Jinpachi at that point. It is also nice because we don't really have too many hulking body characters in the Dragon Ball games, though I feel like the number has slowly increased over the years. Now, in regards to Toppo's chances, I think they're pretty good. Obviously, I don't want to say 100% because we know kind of the main representative for the Tournament of Power would be Jiren, but Toppo is basically the penultimate antagonist, if you want to call Jiren the antagonist, in that arc. He's basically the Vanilla Ice to Jiren's Dio, if you want to put it that way. So I think he has a pretty good shot, and I think both of his forms could make in the game, the base form and the God of Destruction form. However, I think this form is probably more likely just because I think he became, he showed a bit more off, and also it's kind of it's the form he has his last fight in, so I feel like you have to have it. And the whole God of Destruction stuff is pretty cool, and we don't really see many characters do it. And we know, since there's probably a good chance Ultra Ego Vegeta probably at the very least won't be in the base roster. We really only have him and Beerus for the God of Destruction goodness.
Number 9.
When I first got into Dragon Ball Z, I really liked Piccolo. Then over time, he was always just kind of there to me. I mean, I never disliked him. He just sort of fell out of my interest, to put it lightly. But then Dragon Ball Superhero came along and gave us this new form for him. And it was definitely exciting and refreshing because the only other times Piccolo transformed, he really didn't change appearance or anything. I mean, he might have learned a new technique or something, but I don't know if it was even from fusing with Nail or Kami. But I think Orange Piccolo is a pretty cool form. It's another big body character. I definitely like some of the moves he does in the form, especially, I guess, the unofficial name for it, Apocalyptic Burst, his ultimate in Xenoverse 2. Granted, I don't know if orange is the color I would have chosen for him, But I guess there wasn't really another character using orange for their transformation, since colors seem to be a big theme these days. And not only that, I guess it does make sense considering he got this power from the Dragon Balls, which are orange. And even if I don't really like the color, the actual like physical other transformations to him, like the antennas, the eyes, are definitely really cool and just kind of growing a lot bigger and more muscular in size. Now, in regards to his chances, this is a tricky one because I could see maybe Dragon Ball superhero stuff being saved for DLC, just because at the time, at least, it is kind of the new hotness, at least when it comes to the animated stuff. Now, I mean, that's, I think, maybe me being a bit more jaded. That's what I see a lot of other people say. A lot of people think that, you know, they're going to be saving a lot of the good, newer super stuff for DLC, and superhero is at least the newest kind of animated Dragon Ball Super stuff, at the very least. And I'm not really worried about them be able to think of a moveset for him. I think it's pretty easy. But yeah, I guess we just really have to kind of see more of the game to kind of see how far into Super they're going to go. Because some people, I think, do consider the Broly movie and Dragon Ball Superhero kind of as movies and not really as part of Dragon Ball Super, the anime, which I think is a bit silly. I mean, they might be just waiting until they finally adapt that in an anime, which I kind of hope they do and I kind of hope they don't. But we'll see.
Number 8.
Now I've seen everything. You two confused? I didn't know that.
If you know me, you know that Android 17 is my boy. I was really happy to see that he was making a grand return in Dragon Ball Super in the Tournament of Power arc. And it's funny because I think me and my friend always joked like, oh, 17 is going to be one of the first characters they knock out. And then as time was going on, we're like, man, wouldn't that be crazy if Android 17 was the last one standing in the Tournament of Power? And, well, we saw how that turned out. But yeah, it was a really good time to be an Android 17 fan. Sure, you can make arguments that the power up for him didn't exactly make sense, but I also don't really care, to be honest. I was just happy to see more of him and do more stuff. So any excuse for another version of him and a new version of him to be in the game, the better. Now, I guess this is an interesting conundrum with 17, because I feel like he is a character that you could kind of do what Raging Blast did, and you could just have, you know, Dragon Ball Z 17, and then have Ranger 17 be an alternate, and kind of have his supers and ultimates be customizable. You can give him supers and ultimates he only used in Z, supers and ultimates he used in Super. Granted, 17's personality is a bit different in Super, so I guess you wouldn't really be able to reflect that. It also really depends on how big of a super focus this has. If the game is primarily only Super, then Ranger 17 would actually be the default 7, and then Z17 would be the alternate. As for his chances, I mean, because of the fact we already have a 17, you know, like I said, it really depends on how big of a super focus this has. If it's kind of a more retelling of overall Dragon Ball, then I could maybe only see Ranger 17 as an alternate outfit and nothing more. But if it does have a really big super focus, then yes, I think he's 100% going to be in the game and probably be the main 17. Now, obviously, my favorite 17 is Super 17, not Dragon Ball Super 17, but Super 17. That really makes it confusing. But even still, more 17 is always good as far as I'm concerned.
You know, it's not like I've been sitting on my butt this whole time.
Android 17, win!
Number 7.
I'm ready when you are.
Now, I personally do get tired of Goku. I kind of get tired of seeing so many Gokus in so many games. It is a bit tiring, but goddamn, do I love Mastered Ultra Instinct. I've always wanted a white-haired Super Saiyan form. I kind of got that with Baby Vegeta and kind of merged Zamasu, but they're not really Super Saiyan forms. They're just kind of forms that someone that happens to take over a Saiyan body happens to kind of get. So I don't really count them. They're not traditional forms to me. And you can even make an argument that Mastered Ultra Instinct is not really Super Saiyan form as well. It actually isn't. Technically, anyone could get Ultra Instinct, but it's a form for a Saiyan character, Goku in this case, so I kind of do consider it a somewhat white-haired Super Saiyan form. Regardless, I like its design, even if it doesn't have the traditional Super Saiyan hair, and I love the way Goku fights in this form. It's very kind of reminds me of Fist of the North Star, honestly. It's like Goku and Kenshiro basically fused. It's like Goku entered the... someone that's a bigger Fist of the North Star fan is going to have to comment on this. That form that Kenshiro gets, where he's doing all kind of the after images and stuff like that, and he gets like the yellow aura and he's shirtless. It's basically, that's what Ultra Instinct to me kind of feels like a reference to. And I would really like to see how it's handled in the Tenkaichi games. It was handled okay in Xenoverse 2. I think it was definitely overall handled better in Fighterz, though I did like that unique move that Dimps did give Ultra Instinct Goku, where he kind of fired this sort of like mini kind of white spirit bomb. That was one thing I was kind of hoping for the form. I sort of wish it would kind of change Goku's energy blast to like white instead of blue. They seem to always be afraid to change Goku's energy blast colors for some reason. It's one reason I like the 10 times Kamehameha. But I digress. For Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku's chances, I'd say they're pretty good. I mean, it's a form for Goku, and it's basically the final form he gets in Dragon Ball Super, so I can't see them leaving this form out. There's no way in hell. I think you'd have to be pretty negative if you're assuming this form isn't going to be in the game. Like, I mean, I'm not saying there's going to be a ton of Dragon Ball Super characters, but I think they're going to find any excuse. I think they're going to find any excuse to include every form of Goku as possible in the base roster, especially since this form is definitely quite a few years old at this point now. I think my only concern is since Tenkaichi is a more open game, I feel like Ultra Instinct Goku's at least most impressive displays are things that are done up close, and I'm not sure how well the game is going to capture that, at least with like kind of unique techniques and all, but I guess we'll have to see. We haven't really seen proper gameplay of the game yet.
This here is the power of Ultra Instinct. Goku! Win!
Number 6.
Fusion! Let's do this!
Gogeta has always been my favorite fusion, even if Vegito is technically considered stronger. I've always liked him the most out of all the fusions. And it was really exciting to see him actually, I guess, become canonized in the Dragon Ball universe and actually making an official debut, if you want to call it that, whatever. But especially seeing him fight like Broly, which was always kind of foreshadowed in old video game openings, if you notice. And it's funny because even though I love Super Saiyan 4, I will defend that form and most stuff from GT to death, I've always kind of preferred Gogeta in Super Saiyan Blue and even Super Saiyan forms, to be honest. It definitely helps that I think his moveset, or I guess abilities he showed in the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, were just far more impressive while still having his iconic Stardust Breaker that he did against Janemba as an attack. It was kind of the best of both worlds. Only thing that was kind of a bummer is that he doesn't have Big Bang Kamehameha, but I guess you can make an argument that that could be something exclusive to Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, so at least they stand out in that way. And granted, he didn't really do that much Vegeta moves now that I think about it, but I think it is always playing more off the idea that Gogeta has more of the Goku in him, while Vegito has more of the Vegeta in him. But yeah, with that said, I absolutely, he would have probably been higher on this list, but again, he is just sort of another Goku in a way. That's why I just don't think I could have put him that much higher. But even still, I do really want to see him, and he's always a character I will definitely play as, especially the Super Saiyan Blue version. Though I did always kind of prefer the black and orange vest as opposed to the black and yellow. Perhaps that can be a color swap. It's kind of a shame Fighterz didn't do that. But now his chances, I don't think I'm not as confident on Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta as I am, say, like, the other Super Saiyan Blues or, like, Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku. Only because I just am a little less confident on stuff from the Broly movie being in than I am things from the main arcs of Dragon Ball Super. But with that said, I'm still very confident he's going to be in the game. I mean, the movie's definitely a few years old. It's going to be even older by the time Tenkaichi 4 comes out. So I'm pretty confident, just not 100%. I should also say it would be kind of cool if we got base form Gogeta, but it's not something I absolutely need or am dying for. At the very least, he's going to be DLC. I should probably say that. I'm more so talking about the base roster. He's 100% going to be DLC if he's not base roster.
This is the ultimate fusion! Gogeta! Win!
Number 5.
I'll take all you suckers on!
Now, if you know me, I'm not exactly someone that absolutely needs gender diversity or anything like that. If I think a character is cool, I think a character is cool, regardless if they're men, women, etc. But it is definitely cool to actually see some female Saiyans in the canon Dragon Ball stuff, and that are actually a big, powerful threat. Kefla is definitely awesome. I definitely like her very spunky attitude. She put up a fight. Her attacks are really cool and definitely aesthetically pleasing. I like that she's got a little bit of Broly in her, or I guess Kale in this case. She's definitely one of the best Dragon Ball Super characters introduced. Now, I should address Kefla and Kale. It's not that I don't want them in the game. They should be in the game, but Kefla to me is just the best of both worlds. I think Kefla has a better design, but I think Kefla just has cooler techniques. Kale is cool, but with her, Z Broly, and now Dragon Ball Super Broly, she's just not as exciting. Kefla, I think, just kind of adds a lot more to the table. With that said, again, it would be nice if all three did make the game. But yeah, I would definitely like to see this character in Tenkaichi format and how they would do her, especially her ultimate with kind of her laser rave show attack, which I absolutely think is awesome. Now, for her chances, I guess she's kind of in the same boat as Toppo, where she is a definitely prominent representative of the Tournament of Power. She's just not quite at, I guess, Jiren level or Ultra Instinct Goku level. But I'm definitely pretty confident she's going to be in the game. And again, just like I said with Super Sable Gogeta, if she is not making the base roster, she is guaranteed for DLC. But I'm pretty sure they're going to have her in the game, especially because, again, we actually get some female Saiyans in the game for once, without having to have someone like Fasha or something like that, even though I actually do like Fasha.
Put me and Kale together, and what do you get? The strongest Saiyans around!
Kefla! Win!
Number 4.
Surrender. You have no chance of beating me.
Now, when Dragon Ball Super first kind of started with Battle of the Gods, I'll be honest, there wasn't really a character that definitely kind of grabbed me. There was no new character that I'm like, oh man, this guy's really awesome, or this person's really awesome. They either look too goofy or just very lazy looking, until Hit came along. Hit, I thought, was the first really cool character introduced in kind of the new era of Dragon Ball. I think his design was really sick, his personality was really cool and different, and his fighting style is just very different as well. Like, he's one of the most powerful characters that doesn't really do a single typical kind of energy beam attack. I guess the only thing that was questionable was kind of the shape of the top of his head, which, if my channel wasn't monetized, I'd call for demonetization. But that aside, yeah, Hit is just overall really cool, and a really cool character that I hope we do get a bit more of in the future. I mean, it's a shame he kind of got so easily dethroned by Jiren, but I kind of honestly saw that happening anyway, and I still kind of like Hit more than Jiren regardless. Now, I do have to wonder how he's going to play in a Tenkaichi game, just because Hit is more of, I feel like, a close range based character. We've just never really seen a character like him in any of the Tenkaichi games before. And I hope they don't make his moves really generic or anything like that. Or that he's just really super hard to use. Then again, he could be a character that is difficult to use, but when you do master him, he is nasty. I think that might have been kind of how he was in Fighterz. He was definitely very hit or miss for me, no pun intended. Now, in regards to his chances, I am 100% convinced he will be in this game. I'm very confident he's going to be in. I think anyone that says he's not going to be in is just incredibly negative or nihilistic. I mean, he was in Dragon Ball Fighterz, for God's sake, the game that only had a 24-character base roster. So I don't think there's any way he is missing the base roster. He's been around long enough, he's popular enough, there's enough to work with. There's just no excuse to not have him in the base roster.
Mission complete.
Number 3.
This day marks the beginning of a new chapter of the universe. The name of the one to author that chapter is Zamasu, the bringer of eternal order.
Now, this is one of those spots I'm kind of cheating with, to be honest. Now, I like Merge Zamasu overall more than Goku Black. I think his design is cooler and more distinct. And it's, again, sort of a white-haired Super Saiyan form. I don't know if that was intentional or not. And he's also kind of the penultimate form for Zamasu, for the antagonist of the Goku Black arc. However, though, I don't know, there's just a certain style and finesse that Goku Black has to some of his moves that I think Merge Zamasu just doesn't quite have. This is definitely felt in Dragon Ball FighterZ, like, oh my god. You know, I really wanted Merge Zamasu, and then when I saw him after having Goku Black, I was just like, oh, okay, I guess. I think it's just the way that Goku Black uses the damn energy blade. That's just super cool. Super cool and super stylish, which is something we don't see all the time in Dragon Ball. But it was also just nice having, for the first time, a brand new, fully evil character in Dragon Ball Super. Because all the characters that they fight in Dragon Ball Super aren't really evil, with the exception of Frieza, who isn't new. So it was nice to actually have a full-on villain character. And yeah, I just really always liked his moves and attacks. And honestly, I think both of them will be in the game. I think Goku Black is a bit more popular, but I feel like you can't not have Merge Zamasu to at least tell the full story of the arc. It would just be weird if it just ended with them fighting Goku Black and that was it. Especially because it was a character that someone that wasn't Goku technically got a win against. And I think Zamasu would 100% translate pretty easily to Tenkaichi, since he is, I guess, kind of a zoner, and he has a lot of flashy energy attacks. Goku Black, I think, could as well, but a lot of his does kind of probably stem more from up-close attacks. Now, for their chances, I'm 100% convinced at least one of these guys is making the base roster. Both, I'm not 100% convinced, but I'm definitely very, very, very positive. I feel like they're a big part of Dragon Ball Super. You can't not have them. I know people are very divisive on the Goku Black arc. I actually still don't know if that or Tournament of Power is my favorite. There's things I like better about one than vice versa the other. But that's not even the point here. I think they're definitely going to be in the game, and you got to have them. They're one of the main primarily villains introduced in Dragon Ball Super, regardless of what you think about them.
You lack even a shred of intelligence, you foul creature.
Goku Black! Win!
Number 2.
I feel like if you were able to pay close attention to the shirt I was wearing in these videos, you could probably tell this guy was going to be on this list. But I always kind of grew up really liking a lot of the movie villains. And I feel like with Broly, a lot of people, you either love him or you hate him. You either love him just because he's so cool and powerful, or you hate him because you just don't like the fact that he hates Goku so much because he couldn't stand Goku's crying and you think people overrate him. I always kind of fell somewhere in the middle. I love Broly. I'm more of a Cooler and Janemba guy myself. But I've always still liked the guy and always liked playing as him in the games he was in. Then came the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. This was a huge deal because it actually took a character that was never canon and actually brought it into the canon and basically revamped him. Now, admittedly, yeah, I was a little bummed it wasn't Cooler or Janemba. I feel like having one of these characters made canon would increase their chances of making it in one of the games. And I thought that would maybe help Cooler and Janemba. And I would also just like to see them in the main timeline more. But that's not to say it wasn't exciting as hell to see Broly, a movie villain just fully written and created by Akira Toriyama and put into Dragon Ball Z lore. Now, I'm always someone that kind of likes a lot of the non-canon characters' designs more than a lot of Akira Toriyama's designs. So I'm actually very shocked that I actually like this Broly's design more than the original Z Broly's design. But even though I always love Z Broly and I still defend him, I do overall prefer this Broly just from a design perspective, a story perspective, and a moveset perspective. The only thing I kind of miss from Z Broly is his personality during combat. Now, I know a lot of people just think that, oh, he just yells, Kakarot, during combat, but if you actually see the original movie, he actually has some pretty badass one-liners that, unfortunately, Dragon Ball Super Broly doesn't have. And I don't know if he ever will get them, just because I feel like a lot of those lines that Z Broly had just aren't quite as sadistic. And because he's more of a good guy, I can't see them being like that. And I do just sort of miss that overall savagery from Broly in general, but I still think this Broly has that Berserker savagery as well. And I think it kind of translates pretty well in the games. Now, this is one of those few instances where I actually don't like the final form of this character the best. Not to say I don't like the full power Broly, which I guess is the new name for it. But I actually sort of prefer the Rage form the most. I think Dragon Ball FighterZ definitely solidified this. I just like the design more. That the Saiyan armor is probably my favorite Saiyan armor ever. The hair is really cool. It also helps separate him more from Z Broly. Now, I would like to say Tenkaichi would just have Rage form, I guess Super Saiyan form, and then the full power form. Only thing is that sucks, you probably couldn't power down to them, because I think Broly is one of those characters where it's like, since, you know, when he transforms, there's no really just powering himself down. He can't, at this point in the story, he couldn't really control it. So that probably isn't happening. And I'm also worried that they would just give the earlier forms just very generic moves and only give the full power form kind of more standout moves. And or just make that form very slow or cumbersome or something like that. That's something the Tenkaichi games did, but again, this is a brand new game in a brand new era, so I'm probably expecting too much from the past. Either way, I will play as this Broly. He will be one of my mains regardless. He's become one of my favorite Dragon Ball characters, period, now. Probably maybe my favorite Saiyan character at the very least. So I really hope he's in the game in some form. Now, in regards to his chances, kind of the same thing I said with Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. I'm confident he'll be in the base roster, but I'm not as confident with him as I am characters from like the main 3 arcs of Dragon Ball Super. Just because I don't really know how exactly they're going to treat these kind of these movies that haven't been adapted in anime form, which I kind of hope we don't really have to go that route again, but I don't know, they probably will. Not that I'll mind seeing this in another form, even though I sort of feel like it'll devalue the original movie, and I really love the movie. Yeah, I should probably say, like, the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie is probably, like, the best animated Dragon Ball thing of all time. At the very least, he will be DLC, but I really hope he's base roster. I think he will be. There's just kind of that small little gut feeling that maybe he wouldn't just because he's not part of the main Dragon Ball Super arcs. At least not yet. I am really curious to see what the future has for Broly. I know he did finally appear in the manga very recently. You know, I am a little concerned that kind of making him a good guy, he's just not going to be as cool. I mean, I already don't like that the new outfit he has as much, you know, since I guess he lost his Saiyan armor. Not to say he doesn't look as cool, but even still. And then he'll kind of lose that Berserker savagery. But again, we just got to see. Hopefully he'll kind of retain that, but just in sort of a more controlled sort of nature, if you can do that.
Honorable mentions.
Alright, so here's some honorable mentions real quick. I picked 5 of them just because there's a lot of Dragon Ball Super characters, and there are a lot of good choices. So first one, Jiren. I mean, Jiren's cool. He's just honestly kind of the least interesting of the main kind of antagonist big fighters in Dragon Ball Super to me. With that said, he's 100% going to be in the game regardless. Super Saiyan Blue Vegito. I like Vegeta. It was cool to see him come back. It just wasn't quite as impactful as Gogeta coming back. And I think he didn't have as many interesting new techniques to show. Once again, though, 100% going to be in the game, though. Golden Frieza. Cool comeback. I like the form for Frieza. Not as exciting as if it was a kind of 5th form, cooler style form. And I think Black Frieza is probably better. But he still was pretty impactful and showed some cool new techniques. Again, 100% going to be in the game, especially because it's a pretty easy form to pretty easy character to make. Dispo, I think, I would have probably picked him over Toppo if it wasn't for the God of Destruction form, honestly. Super Saiyan God Vegeta. It's funny, I was so critical of Super Saiyan God Goku, but I just like it so much more on Vegeta. And I think he had some pretty cool techniques to actually show in the form, especially going after what Xenoverse 2 showed.
Number 1.
So Beast Gohan was a really big deal for me. On one hand, as I've said before, I really just wanted a white-haired Super Saiyan form. And I kind of got that with Mastered Ultra Instinct. However, it's technically not a Super Saiyan form. It doesn't even have kind of the pure kind of spiky hair that Super Saiyans have. Not to mention, it was only for Goku, and also I think I've heard in the manga, he's basically had new versions in that form where he loses the white hair, or gets all this other stuff, or something like that. Not to mention, I like Gohan a lot more than Goku, so this was definitely really awesome to see. To finally see Gohan get a really big time in the spotlight and kind of get the final kill on the enemy. there's like nothing bad. Well, okay, there is something bad I could say about the form, but I'll get into that. Not to mention, we've really only been able to play as this character now in one console game, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, and that was just very recently. That's part of the reason why this video is so delayed, honestly, is because I wanted gameplay footage of him as well as Orange Piccolo to use in this video. And also kind of a basis as to kind of what they could do with his moveset, because that's kind of the one downside here, is that Beast Gohan really didn't get enough screen time, which is really frustrating. This was kind of the one thing that just seemed like they had to dick him over in some way. Like, he finally gets the win, he finally gets a new form, but of course it's barely such screen time for him. Now, thankfully, what Xenoverse 2 seemed to do was it seemed to take some moves that Gohan just used in Super, period. Not even just from the movie. It seems like he did use some moves that he did at earlier parts in Super, like near the Tournament of Power. So I think that's kind of a good workaround if kind of it's a limited moveset for him. They could do something like that. Granted, we don't really know how this game is going to work, so I'm not sure if some of these specials would even work in a game like Tenkaichi 4. And I also would like to say they wouldn't waste a spot, kind of what the Xenoverse 2 did, where they kind of just took how he was in Dragon Ball Superhero with the glasses and all that, have that be a separate character. I really don't think that's necessary. I think kind of having sort of Buu Saga Gohan, like Ultimate Gohan and then Beast Gohan. Maybe Buu Saga Gohan can have an alternate where he has kind of the more I guess loose hair, I don't know, more raggedy hair and the glasses, something like that. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's necessary to waste a character spot on that. I don't know why the Xenoverse 2 even had to do that, to be honest, but I think it's definitely a good workaround for the lack of moveset potential with Beast Gohan. I know it's kind of pulling hairs a bit, but I think it works. I was really impressed with his moveset. I know in his reaction video that I did for him, it didn't seem I was that impressed, but kind of seeing more of it and actually playing as him, I actually do really like his moveset. I'm actually really happy with it. And he has an easy ultimate. The special beam cannon, the Beast version of it, that's an easy ultimate. I still would have liked to see Beast Gohan get more screen time. It would be the one advantage to having the Dragon Ball Superhero movie adapted in anime form. Not saying that it absolutely needs to be. This would just be one thing that maybe they could take advantage to improve it on with. Now, for his chances, it's kind of the same thing as Orange Piccolo. I'm just not sure if they're going to be too tempted, if they're going to be tempted to kind of save him and perhaps even Orange Piccolo for DLC, just because they're still kind of new. I mean, at the time Tenkaichi 4 comes out, Superhero is probably going to be over 2 years old, but even still, it will probably most likely be still the most recent animated new content for Dragon Ball Super, which they might want to dangle above our heads with DLC or something like that. I know that's what a lot of people seem to say, and I don't want to be naive, but at the same time, I also don't want to be overly negative. We just really got to find out what this roster is going to be like. Is it going to be a lot of Z? Is it going to be a lot of Super? Is it going to have any GT or movies? We just got to find out what the size is going to be to really have an idea. I could maybe see Beast Gohan being a pre-order bonus. That wouldn't be ideal, because then I'm worried he maybe wouldn't get that much love in the story. But hey, at least we'd still get him day one. I could deal with that. I also absolutely love what they did with his voice in his Beast mode. I don't know if they edited his voice, or if maybe the voice actor, the dub version, Kyle Haber, if he did something with his voice. Kind of makes him sound like if Gohan went Super Saiyan 4 or something like that.
So that was my list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, if you agreed with my list, if there's other characters that you would have liked to see that aren't on my list, etc. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'm not sure exactly how close we are to getting more Tenkaichi 4 news, and again, if it's even called Tenkaichi 4. But time will tell. I'm okay with waiting. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like the video if you like it. Dislike if you dislike it. I'd definitely consider appreciating if you subscribe if you like this video and some of my others. It would really help the channel out a lot. Regardless, thank you so much for checking out the video. And as I always say, another time, another place. Keep being awesome.